3, 2, 1.
Gone.
Right.
Okay.
Good evening, and my name is Cllr Amrit Mann, and I'm the chair of the Planning Committee. It is now just over 5 o'clock, and so I would like to welcome you to this virtual meeting of Hounslow's Planning Committee, albeit a bit late. I would like to welcome the members of the committee who are sitting this evening, as well as council officers who will be assisting members throughout the evening. In addition, I would like to welcome members of the public who are watching this meeting at home. As you all may know, until recently, virtual meetings for council business were not legal, but as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the quarantine arrangements required by government, the law has been changed to let local authorities meet in a virtual way to make decisions. Therefore, this meeting is taking place using the recently introduced government regulations. The way this meeting will work will be that as chair, I will be running the meeting and inviting people to speak. As it is very easy for people to speak over each other in meetings like this, I will ask each member or officer to speak in turn at the appropriate stage. This will mean that there should normally be no need for people to interrupt or ask to speak. However, I shall make sure that members have ample opportunity to ask questions and make comments on the reports and applications before them. The exception to this arrangement will be the legal, committee or planning officers who may turn on their microphone to alert me to any legal, governance or planning issue that needs addressing, although I would expect this to be a rare occurrence. In addition, we have producer of the meeting from our ICT department who may also contact me if necessary, but I think it's unlikely if all goes well, as we all hope that it will. The etiquette for members of the committee and for officers who are expecting to speak will be to mute their microphones until you're asked to speak. This means that only one person will be speaking at a time and there will be no background noise, making it easier for us to follow the meeting and also for those watching at home. I will also ask members always to say who they are when they're making a contribution and to speak slowly and clearly for the same reason. We have 6 members of the planning committee with us here this evening, and it is we who will be making the decisions. Officers of the council will provide assistance and advice as required, but the final decision will be made by the members. I would now like to introduce each of the members here tonight one by one. I will start. My name is Cllr Amrit Mann and I'm the chair of this committee. I'm also the ward councillor for Heston East Ward. Now, can I invite Councillor Richard Foote, my vice chair, to introduce himself?
Good evening. My name is Richard Foote. I'm vice chair of planning and I am the ward councillor for Hamworth.
Thank you, Richard. Can I now ask Councillor Mel Collins to introduce himself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Melvin Collins, and I represent Brownfield Ward on the council.
Thank you, Mel. Now, can I ask Councillor Ajmer Garwal to introduce herself?
Hi, good evening. I'm Councillor Ajmer Garwal, councillor from Hounslow Central Ward.
Okay, with somebody in tow. Okay, can I now ask Councillor Vishnu Grung to introduce himself?
Hi, ladies and gents. Good evening. This is Councillor Vishnu Grung speaking. I'm from the Hanover Park Ward representing. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu. And lastly, an old hand at this, Councillor John Todd. Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, a bit sensitive about the old hand. I'm councillor of Chiswick Homefield Ward and I'm sane and sensible. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Todd. Now, I will ask my officers to introduce themselves. I'll start first with Sarah Scannell.
Hello, I'm Sarah Scannell, Assistant Director of Planning and Development at London Borough of Hounslow, and I'll be presenting the cases today.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I ask Leo Hall to introduce himself? Maybe Leo's not in.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Let's move on to Kieran Coughlin. Kieran.
Good evening. I'm Kieran Coughlin, and I'm a transport officer with the council.
Thank you, Kieran. Okay. Now let me ask the legal and governance team to introduce themselves, with Patrick Kelly first.
Good evening, my name is Patrick Kelly and I'm the legal advisor for this evening's meeting.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, now moving on to Wendy Merry.
Hello, I'm Wendy Merry and I'm from Democratic Services.
Thank you, Wendy. And lastly, Jyoti Patel.
Hello, I'm Jyoti Patel and I'm from Democratic Services, also supporting the meeting.
Thank you, Jyoti. Just a brief word. When we get a red border around your image, that's when you're on live. So I think best thing is to wait for the red bordering before you speak. Otherwise, we're not seeing you, but we might be hearing you. So just for the sake of people watching, we really want to get the picture in as well. Yeah. Okay. So. Besides all these officers and members, we also have officers acting in a producing role for technical side of the meeting, but as they're not expected to be involved in the discussion of the meeting, I will thank them for their help, but not ask them to introduce themselves. So thank you, Sadiq. Now, just moving on for good housekeeping. Members of the public are reminded that the agenda and all the reports being considered by the committee tonight can be found on the council website under the Planning Committee meetings page. So if you want to see them, that is where to look. I also want to make sure that all members have seen the agenda and reports, and basically ask if you've had all those paperwork. So has anybody not had it? Let's put it that way. Speak now or forever hold your tongue. No? Okay, so I would assume that everybody's had that. Okay, so I would like to remind members of the need to hear all the evidence in each report we are considering tonight. This means that you should listen to the whole debate. Please do not pop out to make a cup of tea or walk the dog. This is a legal requirement, and I will be asking you to confirm you have heard the whole debate before you vote on any matter this evening. If you should find you are having technical problems and need to log out of the meeting and come back in, please let me know immediately, ideally beforehand, but if not afterwards by turning on your microphone. This would be a permitted interruption. We can then decide how far we need to recap if that is necessary, or if the member needs not to vote on that particular item. Finally, I would say to any member of the public listening or watching, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope this meeting will go well, but any virtual meetings may suffer from unexpected technical hitches, so please, in that event, bear with us. I should also clarify that this meeting is being recorded and it will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel in the next few days. Contributors to the meeting are asked to remember that they will therefore be included in the recording of these public meetings. Thank you, and now we move on to the first item of the agenda, which is apologies for absence. We would usually have a much large number of members sitting on the planning committee, but for virtual meetings, we have concluded it is much better to have a smaller number of members. So apart from me and Councillor Foote as the Vice Chair, other members of the Planning Committee will be attending virtual meetings on a rota basis in accordance with political proportionality. This does not mean that those members who are not here this evening are absent or need to send apologies. They will not be marked down on attendance lists that are maintained by the council. So I know that we have a full house, we have all 6 present, so I don't need to ask for any apologies, and we are quorate therefore. So moving on to declarations of interest and announcements. Is there any declaration of interest from any member?
Yes, Chair. Item 4.
Item 4, yes.
Yeah, I've had a number of emails on this particular item.
Okay. Mel, it's a good idea if you introduce yourself, and that goes for all the members. Introduce yourself every time you speak. So that was Councillor Mel Collins, who's had a number of emails. I think we've all had a number of emails, and I will take it that that's for all members of this committee. Councillor Todd, were you going to say anything different?
Just I visited Churchdale Court, yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay. So in terms of announcements, now I'm going to make this announcement very early on, right? Just in case I forget later. We've got one of our officers. This is her last meeting, and she's going away on maternity leave. And can I, and I'm sure all the members will join in with me, to wish her well. And we look forward for her delivering a happy, healthy baby and coming back to us back in, I think it's April, isn't it, Sarah?
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And the other announcement that I have is that item 6, King's House Sports Ground, the item that is in Chiswick, it has been withdrawn. So I think members of this committee can have an early night. And I think people watching can also have an early night. Right, so let's move on to the minutes of the last meeting. We now come to the minutes of the last meeting that was held on the 9th of July. I intend to take both corrections for accuracy and matters arising together. May I ask members if they have any corrections that they wish to propose? Please speak now if you wish to do so. If there's more than one person, I will give the order in which you can speak. I know that Councillor Todd had emailed me. Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 2 of tonight's minutes. Item 4, 21 Manor Avenue, paragraph 4, second line, which says Councillor Gruhl moved approval on the basis that the extension would be harmful.
Right.
I think the word "not" is missing.
That's right.
I have informed our clerk, so Wendy Merrick.
Okay. Any further corrections or amendments? No? Okay.
No, yep.
Right. So any other member? Any corrections? Any notifications? Comments? No. So can I now ask all the members to agree the minutes subject to the amendments as laid out by Councillor Todd? Is that agreed, members? Anybody not agreeing? Let's put it that way. Yes. Okay. Right. So I can see lots and lots of nods. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I would usually now sign a physical copy of the minutes, but as this is currently impractical, I shall ask the committee officer to ensure that I am provided with a paper copy to sign either by post or when it's possible to attend the council house. In the meantime, the minutes will formally record that we've agreed the minutes as a correct record of the last meeting. Right. Thank you. Let's move on to the planning applications themselves. So the protocol, right, for this is that where we move now to planning application for decisions this evening, where we need to have time contributions, I will ask the legal officer, Patrick, to alert me to when allocated timing has been reached, I will also ask him to alert me prior to the guillotine being reached if we have not concluded the meeting by that time. May I remind all members, officers and public speakers at this meeting to introduce themselves each time they speak, and also to turn off their microphones when they finish speaking. It is also important to speak slowly and clearly so that everybody can understand what you're saying. Finally, if you're making a reference to any agenda documentation, please give the page and paragraph details. Okay. The process for an application with speakers is as follows. I will invite the objector to speak for 5 minutes in total. Members will then have a chance to ask questions of the objector. I will then allow the applicant to make their presentation for up to 5 minutes in total. Members will then similarly have a chance to ask questions of the applicant. Officers will then give their presentation on the application, and members will be able to ask questions as well. So members will then be able to make comments and debate the application. Then we will go for a vote. This process means that the committee will be able to get all the information it needs to make a decision in a way which is fair to all parties. We will therefore start the process of this application. May I remind the applicants, both the applicant and the objectors, that they have 5 minutes. I will ask the legal officer to time each contribution and to advise the people when they have 30 seconds left to help them draw their presentation to a close. So before we go on to item number 4, can I ask Sarah to do a brief introduction on the planning application in front of us, and then I will ask the objector to come in and speak on the item. Sarah.
Yes, okay, thank you. So this is the Churchdale Court application. It's for the erection of 4 new homes in the roof space of an existing block of apartments. The location is in Chiswick, just on the junction between Grosvenor Road and Harford Road. The site is within the Wellesley Road Conservation Area, and the building, the existing buildings are locally listed. Here's some pictures of them. The application site is predominantly in a residential area, really comprising two-storey properties, semi-detached and terrace. And to the northwest of the site is the Russian Orthodox Church, which many of you might know, for location-wise purposes. The scheme proposes to accommodate these new homes in the roof space with dormers and roof lights. And that concludes my original presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Now, we'll start with the objector for this case. May I ask you to give your name and then speak for 5 minutes? I think the objector is Peggy Hugh. She's on telephone. So, Peggy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm the agent. So I'm not sure whether the objector goes first.
Oh, sorry, no. The objector goes first. Sorry, my mistake.
Okay.
The objector is Ewan Aparicio. I hope that pronounced that. Ewan, are you on the line? Hi.
Yes, I'm on the line.
Okay. Tell me when you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, I believe I'm ready to start now, please.
Okay, so off you go. Your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the council for their time today. My name is Ewan Aparicio. I'm a resident of Churchdale Court. I've lived here with my wife since 2014. I'm raising the concerns on behalf of my neighbours in the West Chiswick and Gunnsbury Society. The council will be aware of previously rejected plans on this site in March 2014 and January 2015 on appeal to the Planning Inspectorate. We believe the Planning Officer's report does not address the arguments for previous refusals, nor the concerns raised by the Planning Inspectorate. These arguments focus on 3 areas: impact to the conservation area, impact to existing residents, and the quality of the proposed accommodation. Regarding the conservation area, the buildings are 1930s purpose-built blocks in the Wellesley Road Conservation Area. They were added to the council local list in September 2019, demonstrating their historical, architectural and cultural importance. The National Planning Policy Framework calls for the refusal of poor designs that do not enhance the quality or character of the area, which these do not. The Planning Officer's report highlights the reduction in carbon emissions by installing 19 PV solar panels on the roof as a key reason for approval. However, these diagrams only appeared in the amended and since rejected sustainability reports submitted on the 20th of May, but not in the CGI diagrams or the initial report when planning permission was first submitted. This further alters to the roof and was submitted after the written objections deadline of the 22nd of April. The Planning Officer's statement that this represents a reduction in carbon emissions is misleading, as the sustainability report proposes the provision of these solar panels for use by the 4 new flats, with no reduction in emissions outlined for the existing properties. As such, the addition of 4 new flats is still a net increase in emissions to the Churchdale Court buildings. The existing flats benefit from full windows that are not possible in the roof space. This leads to a design compromise of dormer windows and roof lights not in keeping with the rest of the building. The solar panels and dormer windows will be clearly visible from the street, in amenity spaces, by neighbours in the opposite buildings and from the elevated Great West Road, and I included photos 1 to 3 to demonstrate this. Additionally, the dormer windows will not provide symmetry on the rear side of the building. All of these features are contrary to the Council's unitary development plan, which states that any development in a conservation area should respect the character of the existing architecture in scale, design and materials. The draft London Plan Policy for 2020 to 2029 referenced in the Planning Officer's report targets the creation of 6,800 new homes in the borough. 4 flats is only 0.059% of that target. There's no reference why the Wellesley Road Conservation Area is in particular need of new housing when there are adequate new builds aimed at regenerating areas at Kew Bridge West, Brentford Project, Bollow Lane and the High Street Quarter, which totals 1,852 new homes, or 20% of the council's target. Regarding the residents, sadly, the freeholder has not consulted with us regarding our objections or at any point during the current or previous applications. The Planning Inspectorate noted that existing amenity space was considered, quote, marginal in terms of acceptable space standards. Adding 4 flats reduces that space further per flat from 23 metres squared to 20.3 metres squared, below the local plan SC5 requirement of 25 metres squared. This is an added concern to our health and well-being during a pandemic, as it restricts our amenity space further and our ability to social distance. Regarding the quality of the new flats, the roof space was not designed for dwellings, as evidenced by the substandard ceiling height gap, which just passes the required 75% ratio by 0.4. The loft space is also currently only accessible via existing flats, which is also included in photos 4 to 8, which is not shown in the plans. There are electricity running for the blocks and top floor apartments in this space, and the plans do not demonstrate there is sufficient space to accommodate these, nor how residents or workmen will access them for repairs or emergencies. Fire separation walls will need to be breached to provide access to rooms in the new accommodation, with no indication these will be upgraded to provide the minimum of 30 minutes fire resistance set out in the building regulations. The new flats have no access to the external fire escape, which will add additional strain on the main hallway in event of any evacuation. In closing, we believe the addition of 4 poor quality flats does not outweigh the harm to the amenities and living conditions of our homes. In addition, we believe the plans do not add to the character or appearance of these locally listed buildings and would undermine the Wellesley Road Conservation Area. As such, we request that the council once again refuse this application. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Right, may I now ask members to ask any questions they may have about the applications to Ian. I intend to do this by going down the line of members alphabetically, one by one, ending with myself. So I'm going to start with Councillor Richard Foote, my Vice Chair. Richard, any questions to Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure. I heard Ian saying that he represented an organisation. I wasn't quite sure, Ewan, whether or not you're actually a resident in this block.
Oh, yes, I am. I live in Block A of Churchdale Court today.
Okay, fine. And some of your photographs in the loft,
yeah.
were showing cables flying around, but that's not unusual in lofts. Certainly it's not unusual in my loft. But I mean, I would have assumed that would have been accommodated in any plans that go forward. Have you not seen anything on this?
I appreciate it, Councillor. I do not see them in the plans, and the concern is obviously today we can access the loft space from our building, and it's unclear how we would be able to access any of the, a workman would access those cables if and when there is any kind of reason that we need to get work or an emergency. So that personally, we can't find that in the plans anywhere.
Can I just say, when you say we are able to access the loft space, is that all residents there, or just those on the current top floor?
Yeah, all residents on the top floors have an individual access to the loft, and the loft space above my apartment, for example, is entirely contained above my loft space. So there is no access from outside of my flat today into the loft, and that would be the same for the other flats on the top floors.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Richard. Now, Councillor Mel Collins. Mel, a question to Ian.
No, not at this stage. I shall keep my powder dry for the developer.
Okay, thank you, Mel. Councillor Ajmer Garwal, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bishnu Gurung, any questions to Ian?
Sorry, Councillor Gurung, you're on mute.
Yeah. Yes, Chair. Yeah, I do have just one question. Ian, you just bring up the London planning data. You mentioning that's the square meter of the flat is not equivalent with the London data. Can you go bring up a little bit clearer on this matter, please?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Are you referring to the amenity space or the roof space?
No, I mean to the flat, the roomy space that you are talking about. You're talking about the 23 meter per square or something.
Okay, yeah. So I think let me just understand this. Councillor Gurung is asking you to probably expand upon the size of the flat, which is slightly smaller than the 23 point something meters that is required. So it's I think it's 20.3. I think you mentioned in your presentation.
That is in relation to the amenity space, so the garden area that is in between the two buildings. That's what I was referring to, not the space itself, the square meters of the new builds or existing flats. The space today is obviously between 30 apartments, and by adding 4 more apartments, the amenity space would be reduced from 23 meters squared per flat to 20.3 meters squared. So that's how much space would be in the amenity area.
Councillor Gurung, has that cleared up the anomaly?
Yes, indeed, Chair. Anyway, I will come back with the officer later on. Otherwise, it is fine for now. Thank you, Ian.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gurung. Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, Ewing, good afternoon. I've got a number of questions.
Okay.
What change have you seen in the application, apart from the number of flats, in this application and the previous one that was refused and again refused on appeal?
Well, as you mentioned, obviously the number of flats was reduced, but what we haven't seen changed is the impact that this is going to have on the appearance of the building itself. Now, in the initial plans from like 2014 and 2015, there were a number of windows slightly larger being placed on the roof, as well as some roof lights. With this new application for planning, there is different windows, the smaller sized dormer windows that still do not actually represent the windows that we are required to have in the building. If you visit the building, obviously the windows are, I think they have like white Georgian bars, I think is what they're called, and they're all very similar in appearance. So these windows, again, are not the same, and there are roof lights peppered along the back wall, which are not symmetrical, and again, represent just a different type of window that they're asking to build in that space. There's also the issue of the solar panels, which have been added to one of the blocks. I think it's 19 in total was what's in the planning officer's report. And they obviously significantly alter the appearance of the roof as well. And despite what it says in the report, those are visible from the street. I don't know if my photos were shown during the presentation, but the ceilings in the back are very obvious from the street.
Okay. Chair, can I carry on, or do you want to go back?
No, carry on, and,
that's very kind
let me know when you finish, yeah?
Yeah, it's very kind of you, Chair. Thank you very much. Yeah, I want to come back to basics, Ewan, please. What's interesting to me, amongst other things, that when they previously appealed, at that time, you weren't part of the conservation area.
Yes, I think that's correct. I believe it was expanded at one point to include.
Okay. Well, I don't want to chat. As I understand it, according to your contribution, you were listed in 2019, and I thought the entry was very significant, that the block, amongst other things, makes a very positive contribution to the conservation area, and it's a unique building. Do you stand by that definition?
I do. It's a 1930s style building in an area where they're predominantly of a Victorian design, and there are not many blocks like this in the area. Additionally, if when you walk around the area, that none of the other buildings here have had solar panels or roof space like flats built into their roof. So if that work were to go ahead, it would set a precedent that would be possible in other buildings as well.
Okay, I want to come to the dormer windows, and I'm for members. I'm looking at page 9 in the comment, and it says the proposed roof lights and dormers would harm the character and appearance of the existing building and conservation area. And the answer given by the council on page 18, give me a second please, is policy context. The National MPPF says permission should be refused for the development of poor design that fails to take the opportunities available for improving the character and quality of an area in its way it functions. It is proper to seek or promote or reinforce local distinctiveness. Now, you haven't heard my question before, Ewan, but I want to drill into what your views are on two things while you're here. One is these windows, and save me asking another question. I tend to believe your interpretation of whether the solar panels will be seen or not. Can you strengthen your argument as to your interpretation of whether it will be seen, as well as dealing with the windows, please?
As to whether the windows and solar panels would be visible, you mean?
Correct. Well, no, I want you to deal with the quality of the windows and the observation in the MPF, and separately the suggestion that the solar panels won't be seen and therefore should be permitted. Okay.
I'll try and do that.
Sorry if I'm not.
No. I'll try and answer the question about the windows and then the visibility. Regarding the windows, if you in the previous plans that were rejected, they are larger in size. And now my understanding is that the windows then were wooden dormer frames. The majority of the flats in this building now have UPVC white windows with Georgian bars across them, and we're actually I'm not sure exactly what the restrictions are, but I know that previous people in the block have applied to get their windows changed and have had that rejected. I think there was an application in 2013. So they need to be all in keeping, across each of the existing flats today. Now, looking at the windows that are submitted in the plans, my understanding of them and that of my neighbours as well, as we've been reviewing these together, is that they are not the same style of window as the ones that we have today. And the fact that the roof lights, for example, are kind of peppered along the ceiling space in a way that's not asymmetrical. So they are different in appearance. Is our interpretation to how they look today. And as I mentioned, we are not able to change ours in any style. There is also a significant change in the type of windows that are there because they're smaller than the ones on previous applications, which means there's going to be significantly less light going into the building. Now, I know that there is a light survey that's being undertaken for the building, but I think it's fair to say that a number of roof lights on one side, which is the southern side where you would typically get more light, is not going to bring much light into the property itself. And so it's actually going to be considered quite dark, I believe, from what you see. So they're of a low quality. They don't match the building, and that you're building them in a roof space that is not actually designed to have windows in it to begin with.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry.
I was going to say, regarding the visibility, I did submit some photos in the plans. I think it's also worth noting that the CGI plans that were sent in, to demonstrate the window space, is obviously taken from an angle where you can see the roof space. So some of the comments regarding, in the planning officer's report, regarding the fact that the solar panels are not visible is quite misleading. I mean, you can quite clearly see that the roof is visible from the street, as in the CGI plan and my photos. There's also traffic that runs across the Great West Road, which is elevated above the street, above Harvard Road, probably by about, I think, 10 feet. So as cars are coming in from, let's say, the airport into the city to Hammersmith, there's a very clear visible view of the blocks as you drive past the whole building. So they would be visible from there as well. And of course, if we're standing on our back balcony where the fire exit is, I can look out onto my neighbour's building and I'll be able to see the windows there as well. And just as a final point, a number of the public in the area use the amenity space between the buildings as a thoroughfare because there are gates there. So the public walking through the space would be able to see the back of the buildings where those would be as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Lastly, it's me to ask questions. I have no questions. So, Ian, thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. So now we move on to the applicant, or rather the agent for the applicant. May I ask Peggy to give your name in full, and then you've got 5 minutes. So let me know when you're ready, and we can then kick off.
Okay. I think I'm ready.
Okay. Off you go.
Good afternoon, Chair, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peggy Hui, and I'm a planning consultant from Maven Plan Limited, the agent for this application. The current scheme seeks a planning permission for conversion of the existing roof space at Block A and B into 4 two-bedroom flats. The site has a record of 6 flats, which was dismissed at an appeal in 2015. Since then, the applicant has appointed a new consultancy team and had 2 pre-app discussions with the council to understand the concerns and to develop the right approach to the site. A significant effort has been made to ensure that the current scheme addressed the inspector comments at the appeal and all the comments provided by the planning officer at the 2 pre-app discussions. First of all, I would like to address the resident comment. The first comment is, I think it's about the building do not actually respect the character and appearance of the existing building on conservation area. It is quite a significant change that we made in the current scheme compared to the appeal scheme. The appeal scheme contained 14 dormer windows at the front roof space, an extension to the front gable, and also new windows insert at the front gable, etc. All these elements have been omitted from the current scheme. The current scheme has gone through 2 pre-app with the council to refine the design. At the front, only conservation style roof lights are proposed, and dormers are limited to the rear elevations. There's a concerns about the dormers design. The proposed dormers are broadly in line with the existing windows below. The dormers are arranged in pair, all being of equal width and height, and with the same width of gap between each pair. The center line of each pair is positioned to align logically with the window group below, and the end pair of the dormer aligns symmetrically with the chimney stack above. I think there's also a comment about the standard of accommodations. All the unit size is actually meeting the national described standard for 2-bed and 3-person. There's a concern about the light demand into the room. As demonstrated by the daylight sunlight report, all the room actually complies with the BREEAM standard. Turning to the benefit of the scheme, the proposal will provide 4 high-quality flats which contribute to Hounslow small site target as settled in the draft London plan. For Hounslow, the target is 2,800 units over the plan period. The external alteration has been carefully designed. The scheme has incorporated inspector comments made on the previous appeal and the office comments at the pre-app submission. There will be no alterations to the feature front gable and no dormers at the front roofscape. The dormer at the back will have a uniform design and the proposed material will match the existing material. In our view, the scheme respects the architectural design of the host building and also the character and appearance of the wider conservation area. There's a concern about the amenity space. Yes, I mean the scheme does not actually propose any additional communal amenity space. The approach taken is if we introduce roof terrace at the roof, that will encroach the design of the host building. But the applicant will have access to the communal garden between 2 blocks, same as the existing residence. The site is also in close proximity to designated public open space, including Harbour Hill Recreation Ground and Turnham Green. Overall, we consider that the scheme provides a good standard of accommodations. And the proposal has been carefully designed to protect the neighbouring residential amenity, and there will be no overlooking issues. The scheme will be cost-free, and the applicant accepts the draft conditions to restrict future occupants from obtaining parking permit, and sufficient cycle space will be provided to comply with the London Plan cycle space standard. The proposal will secure the site-wide 50.43 carbon dioxide emission reduction against the building regulation Part L baseline, and also contribute to the carbon offset fund.
30 seconds left.
£9,000. We believe that submission has demonstrated the proposal is in full compliance with the NPPF, the London Plan, and the local planning policy. It is therefore respectfully request the application be approved, subject to appropriate conditions and a completion of a Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Right, let's move on to our members. So members, you're going to ask questions. So again, we're going to follow this alphabetically. So can I ask Councillor Richard Foote to ask questions of the applicant's agent? Richard.
So I was having a problem reaching my microphone.
Okay, as long as it works.
Yeah, it works, and I'm only going to be on briefly. Yes, this is Councillor Richard Foote, and I have no questions at this particular point in time.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Councillor Mel Collins.
Yeah, Councillor Melvin Collins, Brentford Ward. Yes, Chair, I have a number of questions, if I may. The first and important one, from my point of view, can you tell me what access there would be for either people with disabilities to live in these properties or to attend these properties as visitors?
I mean, the access will be using the existing communal entrance, so that will be staircase. So that at the moment there will be no special arrangement for disabled access, etc. Because I mean that's the existing building. That's the proposal doesn't actually make any changes to the lower level, etc. So that will be like a continuous stairs up to the 3rd level to provide access to the new flats only.
Okay, Mel.
No, Chair, can I come back on that one?
Yes, yes.
Can you be more specific about the access to the 4 flats rather than the access from the ground? Obviously, the ground access has to be DDA compliant, full stop. But I'm more concerned about the access for people with disabilities to either get access to live there if they so desired, or more importantly, if a person with a disability should want to visit a friend or relative there.
I mean, the flat is only designed access by staircase from the second level to the third level, and that's the only new stair core connecting the flats to the lower level. So I'm afraid there's no special arrangement to allow the disability access.
Well, maybe, Chair, I'll be allowed to come back and ask the officer about this, because it appears that it's not DDA compliant, but we'll come to that. There seems to be some concern by the objector, Ewan, about the solar panels. Now, as responsible committee members, obviously we're looking for the Green Deal as much as we can, and that's very important. Can you tell us what efforts that you've made to conceal the solar panels, but obviously by still retaining the best value of the solar panels? Sorry.
Yeah, the solar panel is only limited to the rear of Block A, so in two groups together, set below between the dormer and the roof. I mean, at the front you can't see the solar panel, but I agree from the side of the road you can if there's angle that you can see part of the solar panel from the street scene.
Okay, so is there any way of concealment by introducing some kind of green plan for the roof to make it more conspicuous?
I mean, that's the kind of indicative location for the solar panel, but we do receive conditions, and then subject to that condition, details of solar panels and details of the design, etc., will be submitted to the council for approval.
Thank you. That's that question. My next question, please, Chair, if I may. Have you done the sunlight daylight test to ensure that at all times of the year even these new flats are not going to impinge on the light of any neighbour in the vicinity? And if not, why not?
Sorry, you mean the daylight sunlight report on infringe the existing properties, or in terms of the light coming into?
In terms of when you build these new dwellings, I assume that the building will then become slightly higher than what it is at the moment. If that's the case, can you tell me by what meterage, and can you then tell the committee what tests you've done and at what time of the year on daylight sunlight of impingement on neighbouring properties is what I'm trying to get at.
Right, okay. The building is not going to be higher. It's only 3 set 6 dormer windows will be inserted at the rear roofscape of the building, and the dormer window is actually set down from the ridge of the building. We did the BREEAM report, comply with the industry standard, etc. And the results show that there's no infringement. The daylight going into the units will be acceptable, etc. So the report is actually submitted to council, and then I think it's actually agreed by the council officer as well.
Fine. 2 to go, Chair. So my next question, I understand that the square meterage of the windows are actually smaller than what the refused application are. Have you done any sort of theory test as to find out, obviously in daylight, how much that's going to reduce the light in each of the rooms of the properties of the new dwellings?
You mean the size of the you mean the comparison between
the perception of natural daylight going into each of the habitable rooms?
We did the test, like a full test. I mean, about the daylight into each of the habitable rooms, and the result is actually, I think the result in terms of all the percentage is actually in the report, which complies with the standard. So no windows is actually.
I'm sorry, we're talking over one another.
No, sorry, no windows is actually failed the test in terms of the daylight sunlight requirement.
Okay, so that I can let my other colleagues come in and ask questions. This is my last one. I'm very concerned about the reduction in the amenity space meterage. Can you comment on that? And is there any way that in collaboration with the council that you can actually increase that meterage space back to the 23 metres?
Yeah, I mean, the scheme is not going to reduce the overall size that is provided on site in terms of the communal amenity space. The calculation that the 20.3 square meter per unit is only take considerations of the communal space between two blocks in terms of considerations. But if we include the other green area, separate the building from the pavement along Harvard Road and Groveland Road, etc., the amenity space in total is over 1,000, as shown on the layout plan. I think it's 1,264. If we use that figure to divide by 34 flats, the figure is actually a lot higher, which means the amenity space per flat is actually 37.2 square meter per unit. Now, I appreciate some of the units, some of the area may not seem to be usable as an amenity space, but this is also like green area provided by existing on site that can be enjoyed by the residents. So so I mean the application doesn't actually include any new space, but I mean this is the existing situation. So it depends. If we include all the green area on site, the figures is a lot higher.
Okay, Chair. I'm most grateful for the time, and I will come back and ask questions of the officer.
Okay, Mel. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ajmer Garawal, any questions to Peggy?
Yes, hello. It's Councillor Ajmer Garawal from Hounslow Central Ward. Councillor Mel Collins have asked a few of the questions which I wanted about the amenity and that. First of all, very silly question, but can you explain to me what roof lights are? Are these going to be outside somehow? Because there's a lot going on about the proposed roof lights with the dormers, which the other residents are worried about. So what exactly are roof lights?
Roof light is like just like a window or glass open up at the roof. So it's actually flat. It's not going to be like at an angle or to anything. It's actually quite, it's actually example down in Groveland Road. I think, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's 40, which has like a similar type of like conservation style roof light.
Okay. The other thing is, I know the council would do this, but has the developers consulted with the residents there about your design, and especially about the loss of the amenity space? Well, it is a loss when you've got other people sharing it with you. Also, there's a few things which in the comments they're worried about, like there's an existing tree where the cycle space is going to be. Are you, is the tree surviving, or are you cutting down the tree? Also, like the residents seem to think it's inappropriate where you're positioning the store bins, you know, positioning of the bin stores rather. And also, there's a comment that the freeholder has provided poor maintenance in the past. So obviously the residents there already are worried about these things. Have you had a consultation with them to put their mind at rest, or to maybe work with them to adjust some of your design or something?
I mean, at this particular application, we didn't actually do any like formal public consultation with the residents, but I can't confirm whether the client separately has consulted the resident or not. Which is something I need to check. I don't know whether they do something informal. I just don't know, but there's no public formal consultation with the residents in terms of like a public meeting, etc. In terms of the tree and the bin store, we actually submit like a revised site layout plan, which is revision A, which shows that there's no new bin or new cycle store near the tree, so we are keeping that tree. There's no new facilities will be put around that tree. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Quite disappointing that you haven't consulted with the residents, and disappointed about the disability access as well. But okay, thank you very much. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Ajmer, thank you. Councillor Bishnu Gurung.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'm Councillor Bishnu Gurung from Hanot Park Ward. I do have just one small question for you. The objector mentioned about the access of the building, of the roof. So, and he's concerned about the no access in there. So how do you respond on that one?
Sorry, did you mean the access to the roof level?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I understand there's like a hatch that you can actually assess the roof level at the moment. Yeah, but in terms of concerns, I'm sure if they need to assess the roof, etc., they can contact the applicant or the landholder to arrange access to the roof. The roof, I mean, yeah, I mean the roof is because I mean at the moment I understand what happened is within the lease there's leaseholder for the right for the owner to repair the roof or water tank, etc. That's accessible. But if I think in the future, if they want to have access, etc., I'm sure that can be arranged.
Vishnu, does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Councillor John Todd. Councillor Todd.
Peggy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yep. Do you have the application papers in front of you or not, or the report?
My report.
Well, no, the report of the council on this application.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Can I ask you to look at page 12, please?
Yes, if you can tell me which paragraph, because the version I've got. Yeah.
Let's go to page 12. Quality of accommodation.
Bottom
of the last paragraph.
If you can, which paragraph is that? Because the version I've got haven't got pages number, but I have got a paragraph number.
It's 5.52.
5.52. Sorry, 5.2.
Got it?
Sorry, is it okay? 5.52, yeah.
Quality of accommodation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the local preservation society says that your flats are 4 flats of poor quality, and they go into detail. They say, by way of example, the arrangement of furniture would be seriously constrained by the sloping ceilings, and the rooms would not provide comfortable living spaces. The plans show essential furniture in position which would not be usable. For example, seating which occupants would be unable to stand upright. relying on a single dormer and roof lights would result in poor quality accommodation. What do you say to those points?
I don't think any of the habitable room is actually just relying on like a roof light. I mean, most all the flats is actually dual aspect. I mean, served by dormers and roof light. And I'm actually on the floor plan. I can see that like all the bedroom or all the living room and kitchen etc. have proper dormers, so proper outlooks from the habitable room. And in terms of they said that the space is not meeting the standard. I think this is wrong because I mean all the units we have a very clear table in our planning statement and assess all the units in terms of the NSD, the minimum requirement, what's the floor space about 2.3 meters and have the percentage etc. All the units is actually meeting the requirement.
Okay, that's very helpful. Can I go on to page 13 now, please? The paragraph 7.
Yep.
Thank you. Impact on heritage.
Yeah.
It says in your application you didn't acknowledge the status of Churchdale Court having a listing. What do you say to that?
I think I can't remember whether we actually acknowledge that's a listing, but I mean when we treat the treatment of the building etc., we actually treat it as like a very high quality building, very attractive, and that's why we're trying to look at the previous appeal scheme, what's the reason for refusal by the inspector, and look at those comments and make sure that we actually respect the original architectural design of the building, especially the front gable, and make sure there's no extension to the front gable, there's no insert of the new windows at the gable, and there's no dormer at the windows at the front, etc. And those rear dormers is actually designed in terms of like in pairs and make sure the gaps between the dormers is actually equal to make sure that's like a architectural high quality design of the building. And I think well the design has been much improved and respect the character and appearance of the conservation area and doesn't actually harm the building itself. Okay,
well let's just stick. I think they make another very significant point, which you need to rebut. All elevations are visible from the street, either Grosvenor or Harvard Road. Now, part of your case, as I understand it, is you're putting some of the more adverse windows, whatever you call them, at the back of the building. But the reality is, as the report says, the additional 6 large dormers to the rear of both buildings with several roof lights would have a negative impact on the character and appearance of the building. And furthermore, this harm would be not consistent with local plan policies CC1 and CC4. What do you say to that, please?
First of all, I don't think the dormers is large. I mean, if you compare the windows to the windows below, the dormers is actually a lot smaller than the window below, and together with the roof light. And the roof light that we propose is using the conservation style roof light, which is commonly found in the conservation area. So and it's minimal. It's not like a cluttered design of the building, of the roof, etc. And again, because we're not touching the front gable, which is one of the main features of the building. So I don't think that's actually. I think it's strike a balance between providing good quality accommodations and appropriate outlook to the residents, and also we respect the original design of the building. So in my view, I don't think it will be like a negative impact on the character and appearance of the building.
Okay, this is my final question. I just want to make sure I understand it from to be fair to you.
Yeah.
My understanding is you're putting certain types of windows in the front of a block and different ones on the back, because some will be seen and some won't. What I and others are saying, I visited there today, both sides will be seen.
Sorry, can you repeat again? Sorry.
Of course I can, yes. Each block has a front and a back.
Yeah.
And you're putting certain windows in the front which may be more conservation compliant than others, and a different sort in the back, on the assumption that the back ones won't be seen. Given that local people say that you can, as I believe, see both sides.
Yes, I mean, yeah, I mean the front elevation is probably more dominant, but I agree the rear elevation equally can be seen from the west elevation from Harvard Road. We are not trying to say because the rear elevation cannot be seen, that's why we put dormer there. The reason why at the very first pre-app scheme or the appeal scheme, that's dormer at the front, but we think it's probably more appropriate to put dormer at the back, so we are not actually affecting the gable feature at the front, and we can still provide appropriate outlook to the residents. There's dormer at the back, but there's also windows at the back of the building, so I don't think putting dormers at the back will itself is actually will harm the building, the character of the building or design of the building.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Right. I have no further questions for you, Peggy. So,
okay.
Mel, yes?
Would you allow me just to ask one question, please?
Go on, Mel.
Yeah, fine. It's a straightforward question and probably with a difficult answer. Peggy, please could you tell the committee what the height is between ground and ceiling in these rooms?
The ground because
yeah, so when you go into the room, can you tell me in each of the rooms what is the meterage from floor to ceiling in each of these rooms? And second question to that, is there a variation from one side of the room to the other?
Yes, that's why the nationally described space standard actually just measure the floor area. They have two sets of information. One set is actually the floor area, and the other key question is how many of the floor area is actually above the 2.3 meters. And the answer to your question is over, I think it's 75.4% of the units is over 2.3 meter.
Sorry, could you repeat the percentage again, because I think this is really important to the committee.
Yeah. The unit size is 61 square meter, and 75.4% of the unit is over and about 2.3 meter in height.
Yeah. So, Chair, sorry to labour this. So, at least 25% of the meterage between floor and ceiling is below 2.3 meters.
Below 2.3.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but that's the nationally prescribed space standard the standard.
Yeah, 2.3 meters. Yeah. So you're saying that 25% of the unit space is below. Sorry, 25% is below the standard of 2.3 meters.
Yes, I mean it's 24.6% is below 2.3 meters.
Right. So, at what point of the room does the meterage from floor to ceiling change from 2.3 to below the 2.3 meters? So, at what point in the room does it start to slope away?
We actually submit we actually indicate the 2.3 line on the floor plan. On each
I'm afraid I don't have that in front of me.
The core bed is actually within the 2.3. So for example, It's quite difficult to say if you don't have the floor plan in front of you. I mean, for example, some of the desks, I mean, some of the storage area will be below the 2.3.
Just the storage area.
Some of them is storage area. It's actually, yeah, that's the floor plan. If you can zoom in, you can see the red line is actually the line for the 2.3.
So the predominance of the living quarters is 2.3 and maybe slightly above, rather than being 2.3 and below.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the same for the the majority of, for example, the kitchen and dining area, the bedroom, etc., is actually within the 2.3.
Within the 2.3.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to leave that there. Perhaps we can take this up with the officer, unless you would like to take my question a bit further.
Okay, I think my point precisely, because I think the officer will probably give you a better indication, right, on the thing, seeing as that you haven't got that particular floor plan with you, right? Yeah. Okay, so is there any further question from you regarding not the floor plan, but in regards to anything else, Mel?
No. Thank you, Chair. I'm most grateful.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got a question before I actually ask Peggy to step down? No? Okay. I don't have any questions. So Peggy, what's it called? Thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm sure the committee is now going to have the officer do the presentation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, now it's time for Sarah to do the introduction on the application in depth, and I'm sure she'll pick up some of the key points that have been questioned, both in terms of the objector and also the applicant. So, Sarah, can we have your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I'll I'll run through some of the things that the key highlights of the report, and also touch on some of those points that have just come up there. Can you all still see the presentation? I know I was flicking through it during that. That's fine. So just to be clear, the principle of this development is strongly supported by officers. Whilst we completely appreciate that 4 residential homes does not make a huge dent on our overall need for homes, it is a good use of a brownfield site, and is supported by our local and national policies. So we appreciate that the objectors are saying that it's not as big as some of the other developments here, but we're taking this on its merits. In relation to the sustainability point, so this scheme, as you will know, the policy is that we have a 35% improvement on building regs for any new properties. So we will only be referring to the new properties throughout this application in terms of talking about its benefits and its impacts. This scheme proposes over 50% improvement of building regs. So the gift of this application is those 4 new units, 4 new homes that are being proposed, and they've worked hard to ensure that the scheme is made up of air source heat pumps and PV panels. So making that 50%, which is in excess of our policy requirement. But to be clear, as the objector alluded to, it is just for those 4 new homes. There is not an improvement proposed for the existing homes on the site. In relation to where these solar panels are, because whilst we're talking about it, I shall just take you to the slide. This blue area in the which is on the internal courtyard elevation, just below those proposed dormer windows, is where the solar panels are proposed to go. Currently, there is, as the applicant said, there is a condition proposed about the detailed design of those. They will be visible. There's no getting away from that, and when, as sorry, let me take you to some pictures. We're not trying to hide away from that. We think the inclusion of solar panels is a positive thing for new schemes, and we should be seen to be encouraging this as strongly as possible where it's designed appropriately, and we believe it is here. So they would be sitting under this, so they're not, as the objector said, they're not in this CGI effectively of the proposal, but they would be sitting here. Moving on to design, a lot of talk about that. Obviously, it's a locally listed building. These two are locally listed, not statutory listed, but obviously we've noted them in the council as being fine buildings that we would like to be noted for their architectural quality or their importance in the scheme of architecture, also in a conservation area. So just to remind the members of the planning committee that that statutory test is whether this proposal would preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area, the Wellesley Road conservation area. So it was a conservation area in the last refusal. We believe that this is a significant improvement to the last scheme, and if you can bear with me, when I finish this section, I'll just flick through to some of the plans from the last scheme, if that would help. The proposed dormers, so just addressing this issue about front and back. So we're talking about this elevation on Church of being the front elevation, but completely rightly that all elevations of this building can be seen from surrounding streets. So I'll refer to it as the internal courtyard, which is the elements that face this green space, and the external. And the reason for the differing designs where we've assessed it internally is that those elevations have different qualities about them. On this front elevation here, the external elevation, we have details of dormers and the windows, the bay projections that already exist. So on this elevation, what is proposed are flush roof lights, which are the lights that you would, the windows that you would see in any kind of roof extension on a residential property, but in this case they're conservation style, so they're flush with the roof, so they will blend into the tiles there. And then in the back here you can see that on that internal elevation we've got the dormers proposed, and they line up with the windows that are below, and they've been carefully designed to do such. So on this kind of flat drawing, you'll see that this is the kind of front elevation that we were talking about earlier, where you've got these just these windows that would be flush with the roof grade. And in the internal elevation, you've got the dormers, which have been lined up to the windows below and are much more the elevation lends itself much greater to the ability for these dormers, because you don't have these projecting gables and the bay features. The previous, if you can just bear with me, if I just whilst I'm on this, I'll stop sharing and then share again. The previous proposal had far more dormers, and is considered to be. I'll have to come back to you on finding that otherwise, because I can't get to it right. But I'll come back to you whilst we're in questioning with the images of the last scheme. The last scheme went to appeal, and one of those reasons for refusal was the character and appearance of the scheme. There was more dormers proposed. Dormers also on the sides, and in the back there were terraces proposed. It also was for 8 units, so there was significantly more going on. The conclusion there was that it didn't preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area and didn't respect the character of the building. Here, because of the work that's been done to position those dormers and windows in such a way, we are confident that it does preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area and does meet those tests. So if I just skip on for now, and I'll come back to find those other plans. The quality of the accommodation. So I'll zoom in again to as I was before, and I know Councillor Collins, you can't see this, but I will try and describe it. The rooms, just to be absolutely clear, all of the accommodation meets the nationally described space standards. So the issue that's come up about how much of the space sits above the 2.3 metre floor to ceiling height is relevant. It is completely relevant here, and it does meet the requirements, so it is a suitable quality. Where, for the members who can see, where this red line is where the roof would slope below 2.3, so it starts at 2.3 and then would slope down. Those areas are at the edges of the rooms where the storage would be, and in the bathrooms and in the corridors. So there is an element of being under the 2.3 in all of the rooms, but overall there is sufficient space at above 2.3 floor to ceiling height to mean that it meets the nationally described space standards. In relation to the accommodation, there is no disabled access to these properties in the roof. That's something that is an unfortunate element of this scheme. We have our requirements in new builds and in larger schemes to have temporary units to be accessible by wheelchair or other means, basically flat from the ground. Where we've got these schemes that are reusing space in existing buildings, that is not always possible, and we've seen that in some of our rooftop schemes that we've had through the council previously. The factor of the matter is that it's not provided here. There isn't a lift in the existing building that could be utilised to get to these properties. In terms of amenity space, correctly, one of the reasons for refusal the last time was the failure to adhere to the council's amenity space policies. There is less units proposed here, so that helps that in one regard. There is no private amenity space proposed as part of these individual units. That is just a fact of this scheme. We think that that's acceptable, given that it's the provision of units in an existing building and providing homes on a brownfield site. And given that there is this green space that sits outside of the site, and it's close to the amenity areas around the site, and they've been outlined in the report. The position of windows and new spaces wouldn't harm neighbours' living conditions, wouldn't give rise to a lot of privacy or a reduction in daylight and sunlight for any of the existing neighbours, and the rooms have been tested and they would all meet relevant space standards and daylight and sunlight standards themselves. There's no parking provided for these new homes, and there's a condition that's proposed that would secure that. The addendum contains details of a further representation received since the agenda was published, which details more as the objector has outlined here. And it notes the new condition about the detailed design of these solar panels. That concludes my presentation. Welcome any questions.
Okay, Sarah. Right, thank you very much for that presentation. Now we go for questions from members, so we'll do that in our alphabetical order. So Councillor Richard Foote, any questions to Sarah on the application?
Yeah, it's really around, well, if I go first to the Block A proposed elevations drawing that you had up, I think.
Yeah, just bear with me and I'll get it up.
All right.
Do you want to ask the question and I'll try and get it up?
It's really about the end elevation, and looking down it's I'm a bit puzzled because it seems to show the ceiling, the lights, the skylights, as being at a right angle to the roof in the same way that the dormers are on the other side, and I'm not sure if I'm seeing it properly.
So yeah.
So I didn't make a note of any numbers on there, just scribbling it down.
So the roof lights that are the dormer windows that are on the internal elevation. are projecting. They would be normal dormer.
Yeah, that's I mean, this, when we look at the front and back elevations, that's fine, because, well, I mean, we're only seeing an outline. Right. Okay, that's the one. Now, if we look at down below where it says Block A, proposed end elevation, there appears to be, now I can't tell because there's an elevation there where you're pointing, and there's another one on the other side sticking out. Now, I'm presuming one of those is the skylights, in which case they shouldn't be sticking through the roof like that, should they?
So this is the existing, this is the front elevation that has the existing details of, it's got an existing dormer feature in it.
Oh,
so
right.
That's what you can see there. And at the back, that's the new dormer.
Oh, okay. So the lights are in effect blocked by that dormer there.
Yeah.
Okay.
You wouldn't be able to see the roof lights in this kind of elevation because they're flush with the roof.
Yeah. No, it was just confusing me because it looked like we had skylights in a dormer type elevation. Yeah. Okay. And the other thing, I think I've found the entry, but basically what we're talking about is approximately 46 square meters per flat, which is in effect where people can stand up in, or normal people. There might be some people taller than 2.3 meters, I don't know.
Yeah, you would,
rules me out.
You wouldn't get John Murray in there.
Yeah. So that's really, I mean, although the apartments are 61 square meters, 15 square meters of that is really could be quite low. I mean we you know, it's at the front end less than 2.3 meters, but if it's sloping down, it must go down to, you know, a couple of centimeters at the bottom end. So we don't know quite how usable that is, but it's been used for I don't know, sort of cupboards and such, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the key point there is that is a permitted area of space to be below that 2.3 meters. So the nationally described space standards allow for flat units to be provided in this roof space scenario, so long as a certain quantum of that 61 square meters is above the 2.3 height level, floor to ceiling height, and in this case that is achieved.
So 46 square meters is okay for 3 persons in this apartment. Is that living space?
Well, so I suppose the living space is 61, but some of that is compromised, and we accept that because of the floor to ceiling height. Some of that floor to ceiling height below 2.3 is still usable space. It's just that it's not optimum. So the provision of the nationally described space standards allows for you this. So as long as 75% of the 61 in this case is above, has a floor to ceiling height of greater than 2.3, you are meeting the space standards.
Well, I think that's, yes, that's what I'm trying to get to, I think. But effectively, we really must ignore the 61 square meters as being living space. The living space is the internal floor area above 2.3 meters, which is 46 square meters, according to your chart on page 21.
Yeah.
So, and the rest of it, we don't know what, I mean, we don't know what its cube is, because it might start at 2.11 square meter height, but in fact it could be dropping down to nothing. So we don't really know how, you know, the volume and usable volume is not really described in there, and we don't really, the thing I find missing in this whole presentation is that we have no proper internal drawings, or not necessarily plans, but drawings of what the layout and the look of these flats are going to be from the inside. And I can't seem to find. There's nothing that gives us any description of that. You know, I mean, this is a plan, but it doesn't really tell us much about what it's going to look like. I mean, I can't get a feel for what in my gut tells me is going to be fairly cramped, but I can't get a feel for it because there isn't a real drawing that displays it.
So are you looking for a kind of CGI of the internal elements?
Yeah, I mean, that would have been I think that would have been useful when we're coming to have a look at it, that we get a real feel for it where something slopes like that. You know, it's
So this is, I appreciate it is very difficult. I think the main thing to bear in mind is that the floor space that is above the 2.3 floor to ceiling height does meet the required size. So the unit is big enough. Here we have a cross section which is quite useful because it shows that where you've got the doors that are dotted along this kind of the elevation that faces the courtyard, you have that full height in that whole space. But you will have been in roof extension bedrooms, and you know that where the dormer isn't, you have a restricted floor to ceiling height.
Because that dormer doesn't go the extreme length of any of the rooms. It's just a section there.
Yeah.
And I mean, either side of it will be coming down. Yeah. I don't know what's in the dormer bit. It's hard to tell. So
in each, they're different rooms. So in this one, you've got the kitchen and dining room, and then the next one you've got part of the bedroom, and then another bedroom. So these have all. So it's a very careful balance of ensuring that these dormer windows respect the elevation or treatment of the locally listed building within the conservation area, and also providing the relevant floor to ceiling heights to allow for a decent standard of accommodation. Here we've made the assessment on the basis of these plans and how it's been laid out. The fact that every one of the principal rooms has its own dormer window, so you've got quite a large expansion in each of the principal rooms of having the full 2.3 or above floor to ceiling height, and you've got the overall space which allows it to be a comfortable living arrangement, and most importantly meet the space standards as described. And just to come back to this cross section here, you can see how that would work through a dormer, and then you can see where just through the dormer where the kind of sides of the roof would slope off, so that on the edges of each of those rooms you would have that sloping effect. Yeah. But for a large part of the room, you have that full 2.3 or above floor to ceiling height.
Okay, yeah. So I've got a number of Dutch friends who, for some unknown reason, all are above 2.3 meters. So I'm visiting them. But yeah, I think it's got something to do with the fact that they keep their feet in water.
Right. Okay. Any further questions?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Richard. Thank you very much. Councillor Mel Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I do my two easy questions first, if I may? And because I need to go back to the thing that Richard was talking. Oh, sorry, Councillor Foote was talking about, because I think this is the whole crux of whether this application may sink, swim, or whatever, not having made people's minds up. Sarah, through the chair, could you just tell us, is it possible for us to add a condition that the solar panels and the surrounding area of the solar panels could be greened in some way to make it slightly more aesthetically acceptable to the conservation area?
Thank you, Chair. I think the answer has to be, unfortunately, that would be a really difficult condition for us to put on. The challenge with solar panels is that you're trying to maximise the receiving of light into those solar panels. So any kind of what we would normally do, for example, with vents or ducts, we would put a fence up around it and put maybe some greenery around it. You can't do that with solar panels because it would compromise their usability. And in this world where we're trying to make sure we are gaining the maximum from our renewable sources, I can't, in all honesty, say that that's a suitable condition. Plus, these panels are on a sloping roof, so they are. It would be very difficult to construct something that would hide them without being significantly more harmful to the listed building.
I'll have to accept that explanation, but I thought it was worth pursuing. My second one is about the access to these flats. I'm still not quite clear how people access to get to these 4 flats. I'm stumped. Can you give us some idea as to how we get the access to these additional flats?
So
I want to make a suggestion.
Okay, the staircase that's existing in the stair core for the existing flats will be extended to provide access to the roof.
Right. In which case, because the staircase has been, or it is proposed to be extended through you, Chair, could I ask if we could put a condition on? I have to accept why, reluctantly have to accept why that it can't be DDA compliant. However, we can go a little bit of the way to it. Could I suggest, Chair, that we ask for a handrail to be placed on both sides of the steps?
Yeah, that's not unreasonable.
Absolutely, we can add that condition.
Thank you. And now I need to go back to the living space itself, because as Councillor Foote was saying, it's exceedingly difficult to understand at what point in this room, on a square meterage basis, where the slope actually starts. And I glibly commented about John Murray, who, for those that don't know, is a commentator on Radio 5 Live, but the gentleman is 6'8". So the poor old soul would be walking around part of this development with his shoulders drooped many years before he might want them to droop. But in all seriousness, I think that this is the whole crux of where we're going with this development, because there appears to me, Chair, to be insufficient evidence as to where the slope in the habitable rooms actually starts and how far it actually goes down to the usefulness of the remaining 15 square meters.
Right, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So I will repeat myself again, so just to start with, so apologies for that. The quantum of floor space that is accessible above 2.3 meters floor to ceiling height in the proposed homes meets the nationally described space standards. So it does tick the box in terms of the actual quantum of floor space that is 2.3 meters floor to ceiling height or above. In terms of where that slope hits in, I appreciate, Councillor Collins, you can't see this plan that I'm pointing to, but it does. There is a plan that's in the pack, that's on the slides, that delineates where that 2.3 line is, and you can see that there is obviously areas of 2.3 meters floor to ceiling height in each of the habitable rooms. That would mean that you can use that habitable room with ease. It wouldn't be harmed as a result of the slope. That's as a combination of the way that those units are arranged and where those dormer windows are. So we've looked carefully at the sections provided by the applicant, which shows how the 2.3 meters would be achieved, and this plan that shows the delineation of where the 2.3 goes, to make an assessment as to whether those units would provide adequate accommodation, and concluded that it would. I appreciate that in the best you know, if everything else was equal, you'd want the entire room of all of the rooms to be 2.3 meters or above. But the plans and the policies do make provision for us to allow for schemes like this, where you're putting homes in existing roof spaces, and they make provision for that.
Right. Through the chair to you, then I'm going to ask a question which I'm not sure if it is a planning consideration, but you can tell me. Because, say, from October round to the beginning of March, the predominance of darkness is probably greater than the predominance of daylight. Is there a provision to ask the developer, not demand, but ask the developer that most of because of the shapes of all of the rooms, to ask that, and because the highest point of the room appears to be 2.3 meters, to ask that each of the rooms actually have ceiling lights without whatever you call them coming down. In fact, that the lighting in the room is actually put into the ceiling rather than having lighting coming down with lampshades and what have you, purely and simply for the safety of the rooms. I don't know, we obviously can't put a condition, but a gentle request, because the 2.3 meters is the highest point of any of these rooms. It seems to me that the best bet is to have ceiling lights in each of the rooms.
So you're right. I think you're talking, basically you're saying they should have spotlights in the roof rather than having hanging pendants that could further reduce the floor to ceiling heights. You are correct that it's not something we can control in planning, but by all means, the developer's obviously on the call here, and we can speak to them to make that recommendation to ensure that. I strongly think that would be an option that they're pursuing in any event, given the compromised floor to ceiling positions in the proposal. But they're obviously here listening, and we will mention that to them as well.
Yep. So that concludes my questioning.
Okay, Mel, thank you very much.
Chair, can I just come back in and ask a question there, because I think it's a bit confusing now. It's not the highest point is 2.3 meters, is it? Is it or is it not? I'm assuming that at the actual centre of the room, it's higher than that, because otherwise the slope would take it down a lot more. It's only where it goes down to the red line because it drops below 2.3.
That's not as I read it, Chair.
Chair, that's correct. The rooms where the red line is where it's 2.3 or below. Where the line is into the centre of the room, it's 2.3 or above. But you'll see in this, and sorry, Councillor Collins, you'll see in this cross section that the room is effectively a box. So you do have a very continual height within that. But yeah, the 2.3 is this point here, so it comes up to go higher than 2.3.
Come on.
Okay, right. Thank you for that. Some of us are getting the bad habits. We'll wait if anybody's got questions until I finish the first round, and then I'll ask anybody else who's got questions. Yeah, so let me move on to Councillor Ajmer Garwal.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Garwal from, well, Sarah knows me. Sarah, congratulations, first of all. Two quick questions. On page 13, I think it's the objector saying or somewhere, it says it's 4 flats of poor quality. Now, from the sounds of it, with the height and everything, they do sound quite substandard. Have you checked the rest of the flats in that building? Are they really substandard to them? Will it bring the standard down of the whole of the building to have slightly, as I said, substandard flats there? or will it enhance it? And the second question is, you know, the solar panels, I ask stupid questions, sorry, but the solar panels, will they be supplying just the 4 flats, or will it be any benefit to the rest of the building?
Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So in relation to your first point, so the new flats that are proposed, they meet the nationally described space standards, so they would in themselves be a suitable quality. We're not looking, we won't be looking to affect, as part of this scheme, any of the other flats. So we haven't looked at making any, we've not assessed any changes to the other flats. So they'll remain as they are currently. So they won't undermine that. In relation to the solar panels, it is actually a very good question. So what we would ideally want is that when you're putting solar panels on a building, that they serve that entire building, because otherwise, you know, it's a missed opportunity. I suppose the challenge here is that the gift of this application is only in those new units that are being proposed, those new homes that are being proposed. So the panels here that are proposed in this application would serve the new homes that are being proposed, but there's nothing to stop in the future, because they're only on one of the elevations. There is nothing to stop in the future the managing agents coming back in for more to serve the rest of those flats, if that was something that would be of interest. But in front of us today is just those solar panels that will serve those new homes that are being proposed.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, Ajmer, thank you. Colleagues, before we move on, some people have got their microphones on, and it seems as if we're standing on a windswept seashore somewhere. So if we can mute our microphones when we're not speaking, yeah? That way just the background noise gets cut out. Okay, right, thank you for that. So let me move on to Councillor Bishnu Gurung. Bishnu?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Shara. First of all, congratulations to you. I've got just one question. Shara, can you have a go to page number 13 and the serial number 5, paragraph number 5? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the objector, it says that increasing the total number of the flats within Churchill Court to 34 would reduce the communal outdoor space per flat from 23 meter per square, and the local plan is 25 meter per square. What do you say about this thing, Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. So absolutely correct. It came up in some of the questioning earlier. There is no private amenity space proposed in this scheme, so that's something that we usually ask for in all of our new homes. It's not proposed here, namely because that isn't something that is suitable at this level. So we've accepted that there's no private amenity space. The calculation that the developer, that the applicant and the objector have made is that by adding 4 new flats, effectively you're dividing this open space that the current homes enjoy even further, and it is actually below our space standards. When you calculate it, adding all of these bits up around the edge, it does meet it. But I think let's be kind of honest about it and say usable amenity space is what we should be looking at. So there is a shortfall. However, the report does accept it, does note it, and does say that there is close by the recreation ground on the other side of the A4M4, and a bit more further away is Turnham Green. But on balance, the 4 units that are the 4 homes that are being proposed here, and the fact that there is some green space at the site, and the fact that it's been designed very sensitively to respect the conservation area and the locally listed building, on balance, we've said that it's an acceptable scheme, noting that that amenity space issue.
Councillor Grung, any further questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair, I had some question, but it's already answered and understand with the Sarah. That's about the standard size of the dormer and the standard size of the height. So it's already asked by the previous councillor. So I'm happy. That's all now. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's very good, Councillor. Let me move on to Councillor John Todd.
Councillor John Todd from Chiswick Homefield. Sarah, I want to pull you up on your description of the site as Brownfield. Brownfield is defined as derelict land or developed land that's not currently in use and may be contaminated. I don't think the owners, the residents would agree with that definition.
You want to carry on, or is it Sarah? You want to respond? Go on.
Thank you, Chair. No, so it's previously developed land. Maybe I shouldn't have said brownfield, but it's land that's previously been developed that we're making the best use of.
Yes, I'm not critical, I'm clarifying. Secondly, another material error. The previous application dealt with 6 flats, not 8. Okay.
Apologies.
No, I'm not saying, just to clarify, that's all. Let's move on. Thank you. I'm very unhappy about the amenity land for residents. There seems to be an unusual generosity in the department on this aspect. I don't see any justifiable reasons that the status quo should be altered to make it worse for very debatable reasons. Could you give me a specific reason why we should ignore the council's definition or the legal definition of what spaces should be provided?
Chair. So absolutely, the report is clear in that the proposal doesn't meet the absolute requirements of our amenity space policy. We have to consider all applications in the round and make a balanced judgment on the basis of all of the elements of the scheme. In this case, the fact that it's 4 new homes that is being proposed and it doesn't have the implications, any other harmful implications in terms of loss of light to existing residents, and these homes in our assessment are good quality and won't harm the privacy or daylight and sunlight received by those surrounding neighbours, that the issue of the amenity space is considered to be acceptable. There is space there. It's not that it's a complete void of open space for these units. It's just that it doesn't meet exactly the space standards that that is outlined in our policy, which in any event are very large. Most of the time we do, you're right, achieve those, but we have to be mindful of looking at schemes in the whole and in the round.
Okay, but I find the suggestion that Turnham Green End or Harvard Hill, which is under the Virtua motorway, is an appropriate alternative use. Is okay. Can I come back to the appeal, please, Sarah? What I find you've been doing unconsciously, in my view, and I apologise if I'm wrong, is we're saying, here's an appeal in 1415, here's a new application. Instead of taking an independent stand, we're comparing one with the other and seeking mitigation. So in furtherance of that, I'll read you from the inspector's report. And as I understand it, by the way, I understand the council recommended refusal in the outset. So your former colleagues agreed with the submission. It says, the appellant note that the proposal would result in the provision of additional 6 units to the local housing stock. Whilst this would be of some initial limited benefit, it does not outweigh the harm that will be done by the development of both the character appearance of the conservation area and the living conditions of the occupier. And it goes on to say, I find the proposed development will be harmful to the character appearance of the conservation area and the living conditions of the occupiers of the proposed and existing flats by way of living and amenity space. They're quite significant, powerful points. I mean, would you like to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. So, thank you, Chair. Sorry. The initial point, the strategic point, what is it that we're assessing? Obviously, we've got to look at every scheme on its own merits. We have to assess what's in front of us. One of the material considerations in this case is the previous appeal. It was for a similar scheme, so we have to be mindful of the assessment that was done in that case. But you are absolutely right. We also have to make sure that this scheme in its wholeness meets the tests, and that in this case it's that the scheme would preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area as well as meet the tests. In the previous scheme, it was found that the balance was not in favour of approval because the detriment to the conservation area and the building in itself was found to be too great to allow the scheme, and in addition there was problems with the quality of the space that was proposed. In relation to the amenity space, that inspector also said that in itself the shortfall in amenity space that was identified for the moor flats wasn't in itself a reason for refusal. So here in front of us we've got a scheme that we've assessed as being preserving the character and appearance of the conservation area. It meets the space standards, it provides a suitable quality of accommodation and doesn't harm neighbouring living conditions, different in that way and differently to the appeal scheme and the conclusions of that appeal scheme. So the balance has been different on that amenity space point.
Okay, a couple of other quick points really. What the Conservation Society say, it's very unusual to have a main bedroom in flat 1 block A. It's compromised being positioned next to the kitchen of diner of flat 2. Can you put that in context?
Yes.
Please, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, so we normally, well, standards of accommodation and how things were built will mean that is less of an issue than it has been in the past, but usually you'd want all the flats to mirror each other. It's not possible in all cases, but in this case we're confident that because of the measures that will be installed through the building regs, that the new kind of modern building regs, that where rooms are next to each other, acoustic treatment can mitigate any issues, and that's controlled through the building regs. But it's not necessarily an issue that we've spotted as being something that we'd recommend refusal on in this scheme.
Councillor Todd?
Okay, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, right. I have no further questions for you, Sarah. So let me now go on to this is the complete of the process for questioning. Now invite members for comment and debate, and we'll do this in the same way, which is alphabetically, and I'll start with Councillor Richard Foote for any debate, any questions, comments.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got to say that in talking about all of this, one of the elements that affected me most was the actual space. But I think we've taken that one round the track quite a bit, and I don't think there's anything more to be gained from it. There is one element that's missing, and it's interesting because there is a paragraph on page 33 about bats.
Okay.
And I've heard no mention during all of this, either from the objectors or the developers or the council, of bats. So I'm presuming that the current residents would know if they got bats in their roof. And so the absence of them making any comments on it means that there isn't any bats in the roof. So I'm just taking it along those lines because I can't come to any other logical conclusion. You know, so there's bats in the belfry. But yeah, so it did. I mean, if there was to be there, then obviously that would be a considerable problem there, because there are high levels of protection of bats and their nesting places, and so it would be something that would be of a high level. But as I say, I haven't heard any comments from anybody about it. So. And I don't live there. The only other factor is that we keep talking about this conservation area, 1930s building. I was born in a house that was built in 1937, and it's got about as much chance of becoming a conservation area as living on the top of Mount Everest, unfortunately. But so I had difficulty in understanding what people mean about conservation areas and their relevance. Anyway, that's all I've got to say, Chair.
Okay, Richard, thank you for that. Councillor Mel Collins, you still on the phone, Mel?
I'm still here listening intently, Chair, and you'll be absolutely delighted to hear that I have no further comments or questions.
Okay, it's good. Let me move on to Councillor Garwal then. Adja?
Thank you, Chair. No, I have no comments. I was going to talk about the bats. Councillor Foote beat me to it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Councillor Bishnu Gurung, any comments, any debate, Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. This is Councillor Bishnu Gurung. I have any comment and no question at all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bishnu. Councillor John Todd.
Yes, I have. I'm afraid I have. Councillor John Todd. I want to pick up a point that Ms Scannell made at the end of her presentation. I'm looking at the inspector's report. I'll be very brief, Chair. It says, with regard to the external amenity space, the council contends that the existing communal area between the two blocks is marginal in terms of acceptable space standards for the existing flat. The appellant contends that a small mound at the west end could be redesigned. In any event, the proposal would result in additional 6 flats with no additional external space provided. This is the more important point. This would not itself be a reason to dismiss the appeal, but it adds to my concerns that the overall scale of the proposal would result in cramped living conditions and poor residential amenity for the occupiers of the proposed and existing flats. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right, that actually leaves with me, and for what it's worth, as I've said earlier, I mean, in a number of meetings, I'm not the tallest of guys, being vertically challenged, so any roof space is always big for me. In terms of how it is in comparison to what Councillor Todd and certainly the objector put out in the initial planning for the 6 flats. The comparison at that time, I think the inspector is referring to the 6 flats and their impact rather than the current application, which is 4 flats. So whilst I understand from Councillor Todd that was the finding then, this scheme has been significantly changed and reduced in its let's say size, so that it's possibly within what we expect of a new residential development. Yes, it's in a loft, but then it is what it is, and it's an application in front of us, and we've had the officer look and go through every single point that the councillors put forward, and personally speaking, you know, I am satisfied that the criteria has been met. So with those sort of comments, I put it to you, the members, because this is a democratic committee. It's of your own mind. Would any member like to move the proposal? Don't rush me all at once.
No, I'd like to move for refusal.
Councillor Mel Collins, you got in there first. Okay, so
he did.
Okay, so Councillor Mel Collins is moving refusal. Is there a seconder? Councillor Todd, you want to unmute? Councillor Todd has raised his hand. Councillor, if you unmute your mic, it would be helpful. You're muted, Councillor.
I'm not now, so I do apologise, Chair. So I've got a screen come up. Yes, I second Councillor Collins' motion.
Okay, so we have a proposal and it has been seconded. So now I'm going to move to the vote.
Councillor Mann, could
Yes.
I just pop in here? We
Yeah.
just need to know on the reasons against which
Absolutely.
we are voting for, yourselves are voting for that motion.
Okay. Councillor Collins,
John
can
and
you?
perhaps John and I, Chair, can do it between us. I would like to say, first of all, on the lack of amenity space, and also I don't think that the living conditions are conducive to the 21st century. I think that we've got insufficient information in front of us to make a reasoned decision to expect people to live in such accommodation.
Okay. Councillor Todd, you have been named by Councillor Mel Collins as doing a double act with him. Is there anything that you want to add?
I'd be delighted to, Chair, with your permission.
Yes, sure.
The dormer windows and roof lights are not in keeping with the rest of the building, and they don't respect the character of the existing architecture in scale, design and material. And using my words, because I can't find the appeal, insufficient application to the existing conservation area and the uniqueness of the property.
Okay, so you finished at that point?
Thank you, Chair.
Right, okay. Sarah or one of our legal, Patrick, if you could run through that, what that is a justifiable planning reason for refusal.
So should I come in? What I've heard there is that there's a reason about the quality of the accommodation that's proposed, so the layout of the units and the amenity space that's provided for those units, and then a second point that about that Councillor Todd has made about that actually the opinion is that the design of the proposal would fail to preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area and would harm the character of that locally listed building.
Okay, Mel, you've heard that from Sarah, and John, you've heard that from Sarah. Do you agree with that?
From my point of view, sorry to interrupt, I do apologise. From my point of view, Sarah's encapsulated my wording virtually as I said it.
Okay, John, you happy with that?
No, sorry, Sarah. I did mention the dormer windows and roof lights not in keeping with the rest of the building and don't respect the character of the existing architecture in scale, design and material. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we have a well, let me ask Sarah whether that's a planning. That's agreed, yeah, that's planning. Okay, right. So we've got a proposal and it's been seconded. So let me move to the vote, and I want each member to state that they were here present, they've heard the debate, and then the way that they wish to vote. And then what we're voting for is the proposal as moved by Mel and seconded by Councillor John Todd, right, which is for refusal, right? So you agree or you disagree, right? Councillor Richard Foote, let me come to you first.
Right, Chair. Yeah. This is Councillor Richard Foote. I've been present during the whole of the debate, and I am voting against the proposal.
Okay, Richard. Thank you. Councillor Mel Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've been present for the whole of the debate, and I'm voting for the proposal for refusal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ajmer Garawal.
Hi, Councillor Ajmer Garawal. I was here present for all of the debate, and I vote against this.
Okay.
Refusal.
Thank you. Councillor John Todd. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bishnu Gurung. Sorry, Councillor Bishnu. You're on mute. Yep, you're okay now.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Bishnu Gurung. I'm here and listen the whole debate of the planning explanation, and I'm going to vote for this against.
Against, right? So against Mel's proposal. Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor John Todd.
Councillor John Todd, choosing Homefield. I've been present for the whole meeting and I'm voting for refusal.
Okay, thank you. Right, as myself as chair, Cllr Amrit Mann, I've been here for the whole debate. I've heard all the evidence and I vote against Mel's proposal. Right, so that proposal is lost. Now we have to move to the officer's recommendation, which is for approval, and we'll vote on that. Is that correct, Sarah? Mute, you're on mute. Yeah. You're on mute. Yep. Okay, so let me go.
Sorry, Councillor, I couldn't come off you. I think Patrick might come in, but I think we still need a someone who's moving it and seconding the. I don't
exactly. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Patrick.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, right. So what we have now, we have the officer's recommendation. I want somebody to move it. I've seen a hand up for Richard, Councillor Richard Foote. Richard,
yep.
You're moving
Chair.
it?
Yeah, Chair. My name is Councillor Richard Foote, and I move acceptance of the officer's report.
Okay. Councillor Bishnu Grung. Bishnu, unmute yourself. Sorry, Ajmer, I saw him first. Bishnu?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is Councillor Bishnu Gurung, and I'm seconded the officer recommendation.
Okay, right. Okay, so now we have the officer recommendation that's been formally moved and seconded. Let me go to the vote now, and we're voting on the officer's recommendation, right? Councillor Richard Foote.
Right, it's sticking on the mute. Right, Chair, this is Councillor Richard Foote, and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Councillor Mel Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mel Collins, Brentford Ward, and I vote against the recommendation for approval. But can I ask, may I have reserve my right to speak at the end of the vote?
Okay, well, once the vote has been taken, I can't see what you're going to add to the debate, because the debate's been had.
May I speak now then, please?
This is no, we're into the voting. So the only thing that I want,
but there's one thing missing.
There's nothing missing as far as I'm aware.
Well, if you let me speak, Chair, I can tell you what is.
Okay, let's leave it to you. Come on, tell me what's missing.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm most grateful. Yeah, although I'm voting against the recommendation, I did make two recommendations, and so therefore, if the vote is cast in favour of the officer's approval, will that be with the two recommendations that I had made?
No.
Yeah, I think that Councillor Richard Foote is absolutely right, but I will ask Patrick to come in. Because they weren't formally moved and they weren't formally seconded, those recommendations were just comments. So Patrick, would you shed light on what Councillor Mel Collins is suggesting?
Yes, I totally agree with what you've just said, Chair. That's right. These were comments that they fell away because the motion wasn't carried.
Okay, so Mel, I'm absolutely sorry to tell you that you can't add anything at this moment in time because we've gone into the vote. Had you moved it?
I'm not adding, Chair, because they were already approved in the meeting.
No. They were suggested by you. They were not formally moved and they were not formally seconded. Therefore, I can't accept what you're suggesting. and the legal team has agreed and told me that that is correct. My
Okay,
assessment of
fine.
that. Okay.
I'll hold my peace.
Chair, can I just ask a question, because I'm not sure what Mel's asking about, but is Mel talking about items that he raised with Sarah during the course of our meeting, which appeared to be accepted? They were points that he made there, not at the point of having passed it. So I'm at some of a loss, because I'm assuming if that's the former, that these were made during the course of the meeting, then and accepted by the officer, then that would be accepted. But if it's talking about items made after the motion has been moved and they were not separate, you know, they're either part and parcel of the total motion or they're part of a separate motion, and we didn't have a separate motion, so it must fall if it's there. And I'm under some
can I answer the question, Chair?
Gentlemen, I don't really want to get into protracted debate on this. Mel, if you hold fire, let me speak to Sarah and see what she said, because my reading
answer.
My reading of it was that the 2 points that you suggested, the applicants were listening and they would, in a matter of fact, would apply. That's my reading of it. But Sarah,
that's fine. Then I'm happy, and I'll allow you to move on.
Okay, but
Richard is absolutely right.
Okay, what I want Sarah to do is to actually highlight what you're actually asking. I understand you, but I think in terms of going back to the debate, Sarah, the 2 points that Councillor Mel Collins raised. Right, you're on. For some reason, we can't hear you, Sarah.
She's lost for words.
Chair, can I help out here? It's Wendy, the clerk.
Hello, Wendy. Yes.
I think the 2 points raised were quite minor things. There was the handrails on the stairs, which I think were already going to go on anyway. And there was also the lights, the roof lights, not the pendulum. And I think the general agreement was that wasn't a problem and that it would be okay. So I don't think we need to have those as conditions.
Sure. That's right.
I don't think it's a problem, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Right. Let's go on. I mean, when we move these sort of things, we've got to move them very early on rather than right in the vote session, right? So we're now to Councillor Ajmer Garawal. Ajmer?
Hello, it's Councillor Ajmer Garawal, and I've been here all through the meeting and debate, and I vote in favour for the recommendation.
Thank you, Ajmer. Councillor Bishnu Gurung.
Hello, this is Councillor Bishnu Gurung. I'm here. I've been here for the whole of the meeting, and I'm voting for the officer recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, Councillor John Todd. I've been here. Councillor John Todd. I've been here. I've listened to the whole thing, and I'm voting him against.
Okay. That lastly leaves me, Cllr Amrit Mann. I've been here for the whole debate, heard all the evidence, and I'm voting in favour of the officer's recommendation. So we have 2 against and 4 in favour, and so that's carried. Okay, now before we move on to the next item, I want to take a 10-minute break, comfort break, because we've been at this since about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So it is now 7:24, so we will meet back at 7:34:35, right?
Chair,
so
sorry,
yes.
Sorry, Chair, to interrupt. It's coming up to 7:30, which means it's the guillotine at 7:30. Can we move suspension of standing orders before you go on your break?
Can somebody move?
I'll move that, Chair.
Okay, and can we have a second?
Mel. Yeah,
Mel Collins
Mel.
to move.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Mel Collins moved suspension of standing orders. Any seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Garawal.
Okay, Councillor Garawal. So that's seconded. So right. Okay. So it's 7:24, and we'll meet at 7:35. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Do we need to redial in, Chair?
Well, you can stay on the line if you like. Yeah, just put it on hold. But I think everybody else can turn their cameras and their microphones to mute, and then we'll just reconvene. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And Chair, thank you. I do apologise that I intervened in the vote.
Right, who are we missing?
Sorry,
Hello.
Chair.
Yep.
Before we kick off, could I ask Councillor Collins to unmute his microphone? *6, Councillor Collins, if you could dial that on your phone, please. Thank you.
Are you able to hear us, Mel?
He's currently still on mute, so Councillor Collins, if you can hear us, it's *6 to unmute.
Hello, Mel, can you hear us? No, I think we might have lost him.
Is his number the one ending 687? If so, it's muted.
Yeah.
Telephone number.
Yeah. I think what's it called? We'll have to just keep announcing on this one. Mel. Hello, Mel. Can you hear us?
He might not be there at the moment.
That's another thing. Yeah, you
He
can't
might
tell them
still
what
be having his comfort break.
Yeah, he does look as though he's still in the meeting. He's just on mute.
Yeah, yeah. How do we send a message to him? Unmute. Sadiq, any ideas?
Text.
We're just going to suggest if anybody's got Councillor Collins' phone number, if you could just text him to let him know *6 is to unmute the microphone.
Let me have a look.
Okay, have we got some of our other councillors in? Councillor Ajmer Garwal, Vishnu?
No,
Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good, good. Welcome back.
Right, can
Yeah,
you
Chair,
hear
I'm
me?
here.
Yes, Mel, we can hear you. Well done.
Right, excellent.
Okay, so Vishnu's
haven't
here,
gone far.
Ajmer's here. Okay, we can start. Sadiq.
All right, ready whenever you are, Councillor.
Let's go on to the next part of this.
Ready to go?
Yep. Okay, welcome back. Slight delay getting members together. Right, now we're going to move on to agenda item 5, which is Tesco's High Street, Feltham. There are no speakers on this, so we'll move directly to the officer. So, Sarah, let's have your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for the relocation of a car wash in the car park of the Tesco's in Feltham. It's a hand car wash that comprises a single-storey building and a cover over a number of bays. The scheme is being brought to planning committee owing to a significant number of public objections to the scheme. We had 91. Whilst there are no speakers, obviously I will run through what their objections were, because that's a significant number for us. So lots of them were relating to the overall car loss in the car park. Now you will see in this image the Western Home sign that's coming across the top of the screen. That is a residential permission which was granted by this committee in 2019, and they have started to commence or the prelim to commence those works. So the number of car parking spaces has been reduced by that development, and a lot of the objection does surround elements of that scheme and the car parking that's lost. There's objections about loss of trees, the impact on the conservation area adjacent to the site, the design of the proposal, and noise and nuisance issues that you would expect from that usually come up as from these schemes. But the application seeks to relocate the car wash, so it was in that area that has now been designated as part of that residential scheme. So these are just some images of the site, and seeks to put it in some new bays. The application, the residential application that I've just talked about, secured 183 parking spaces for that Tesco store. So 183 would be retained for Tesco's. This scheme ensures that 183 spaces would be retained. So there is no loss of parking as a result of this car wash. They've just moved around some of the other spaces in the car park to ensure that they've kept that magical 183. That is also a requirement of the section 106 for that residential scheme. So in principle, the introduction or the moving of a car wash in a car park is acceptable. It would provide, I think, 4 part-time jobs. So there's a modest benefit there. Those car parking spaces, as I've said, have been secured. Whilst the layout of the car parking in the site is being reconfigured, it wouldn't result in any harm to the free flow of traffic in the area. Whilst lots of the objections note that this car park is heavily used, there is no absolute harm caused by the car parking loss that's proposed to cater for this car wash here, particularly as that 183 magic number is preserved. The scheme, I mean, it's a car wash. The design of it is what it is. It's functional. It's in its form, and it works for what it needs to do. There is a conservation area adjacent to the site, but given that the car park use and that there was a previous car wash on the site, I think we've concluded that impact on the conservation area is minimal. In terms of the neighbours, the location of it would mean that it's far enough away from the neighbours on Manor Lane and Granville Avenue and those residential units above the high street shops. But we have contacted Environmental Health, who have commented on the scheme, and there's some conditions and mitigation that are proposed to ensure that the noise isn't audible from those surrounding neighbours. So subject to those conditions, officers are recommending approval, and there's nothing on the addendum for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. Now we move into the questions to the officer. So again, we're going to do it alphabetically. Councillor Richard Foote, any questions to Sarah?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just trying to remember this particular. The original car wash site was in the same car park, wasn't it? Covering car park spaces. I mean, is it just? I thought it was further back in the car park, and it's just on this has moved it forward. Has it not?
Yes, through you, Chair. That's correct. So the car park was the car wash has had to move as a result of the scheme, the residential scheme. But it is a replacement car wash to that which did exist. It's not another. There won't be two car washes. There will just be one in the car park.
So I mean, if it was taking 10 spaces, it would still be taking 10 spaces, but they're different spaces. Is that right? 10 is a guesstimate. I'm not saying it is 10, but
I think
the principle being that it wouldn't be taking more car park spaces than it's currently occupying.
No, that's correct. The issue is that some of the objectors have highlighted that the loss of car parking as a result of the residential scheme is an issue. But as we said, the number of car parking spaces that is secured through that residential scheme, the 183, is retained in this scheme. So you still have the same number of car parking spaces.
Yeah. It's a hand wash car park, isn't it? I mean, it's not sort of mechanical washing, is it? I don't think, is it?
That's with the jet.
That's correct. Yeah, it's hand wash.
So I mean, noise I wouldn't have thought would be a big issue there. So I just wanted to clear up that was the case, and the same with trees. Some of these objections are going through here seem to have got mixed up with the previous objections when we were talking about the Tesco site in itself. They seem to be the same objections, but I don't know. Yeah, I've got no other questions, Chair.
Okay, Sarah, you want to come back on the trees?
Just to say that you're right. There is no trees to be lost as part of this proposal at all, and I think the issue of the residential scheme has entered into some of the issues that have surrounded the comments on this application.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Let me move on to Councillor Mel Collins.
Thanks, Chair. I think part of my question has been answered, but I'll just double check. So as a result of this scheme, there are no loss of trees at all, and so overall, we under our new policy, we should actually gain trees on the overall site. Is that correct,
Sarah?
We're not gaining any trees. There's no trees proposed. There's no trees to be lost.
Right. Okay, that's fine. That's my question answered, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Ajmer Garwal, questions to Sarah?
No questions, all asked and answered. Thank you.
Okay, that was short and sweet. Councillor Bishnu Gurung.
Thank you, Chair. This is Councillor Bishnu Gurung, Hanat Park Ward. I'm here throughout the meeting. And
this is just questions, Councillor.
Yeah,
this is just questions.
Just hold on. Let me finish. I do not have any question with the officer apart from a comment that's, if you put the diagram on the picture, is there any possible that can make it zoom, please, so we can see it? Because it's too small. Thank you. No question. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Sarah.
Is it this one, sorry, Councillor, that you wanted to see, or the car parking layout one?
Car parking layout one, or whatever is, you are showing us, for us on the screen. Yeah, it is too small. We can read it. So if you could zoom for us, thank you.
So yeah, it's just so if I, sorry, through you, Chair, the area, the area of the car wash. So this is the entrance from Feltham, from the high road, which you'll know. The car wash is proposed to be pretty much in the middle, and if I zoom in, it's taking up these spaces here. And then if we have a look, I can zoom into this one. This is what it would look like with the canopy and the unit for the operatives to kind of occupy.
Okay. Is that helpful, Councillor Vishnu?
Yes, yeah, thank you very much indeed, Chair and Shara. Thank you.
Okay, right, thank you. Let's move on to Councillor John Todd.
Sorry, Councillor Todd, you're on mute.
Chair, no questions, thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Sarah, no questions from myself. So that part is complete. So thank you. The question stage is completed. So now I invite all members to make comments or debate the application. And in the same way, I'll follow alphabetically. So Councillor Richard Foote, any debate, any comment?
No, I don't think there is any debate, Chair, to be honest. I think that, we're talking about the movement across the car park of a site that's already there and has been for many years to do the same job, just a few yards away from where it's currently doing the job without losing any trees or parking spaces.
Yeah.
I don't think I can say anything more about it than that. Okay, cheers.
That's fine. Thank you. Councillor Mel Collins.
I have no comment, Chair, except to ask whether I can move approval.
Let me run through all the members first, and then I will give anybody the opportunity as to moving the officer's recommendation or any other recommendation. So, Councillor Ajmer Garwal.
No comment, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bishnu Gurung.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bishnu Gurung, no comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor John Todd.
No comment, thank you.
Okay. And myself, no questions, no comments, no debate. So let's move on to, would any member like to move the proposal or any other proposal? Right.
Yes, please, Chair, can I move approval?
Okay.
Councillor Mel Collins.
Councillor Mel Collins has moved approval. I've seen two hands up. Councillor John Todd.
Second the proposal, Chair, if you will let me.
Okay. Councillor John Todd has seconded the proposal. Right, so we have a proposal that's been duly moved and has been seconded. So we move to the vote. And in the same running order, colleagues, Councillor Richard Foote, how do you vote?
Thank you, Chair. This is Councillor Richard Foote, Vice Chair of the Planning Committee, a member for Hamworth, and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Richard.
Sorry, Chair, can I interrupt? You have to say that you were present.
Oh, right, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was present, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lesson for other members following on suit. You have to say that you were present and you heard all the debate and then how you voting. Thank you. So, Councillor Mel Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Melvin Collins, Brentford Ward. I have been present for all of the debate and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Mel. Councillor Ajmer Garwal.
Councillor Ajmer Gariwal, Hounslow Central Ward. I've been present and heard all the debate, and I vote in favour for the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bishnu Gurung.
Councillor Bishnu Gurung, I have been here throughout the meeting, and I'm voting for the approval of officer recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gurung. Councillor John Todd.
Hi, Councillor John Todd. I've been here all the time. I've listened to the whole presentation and want to vote for the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Cllr Amrit Mann, I've been here for the whole debate and present throughout the meeting, and I support the officer's recommendation for approval. Okay, so that's carried unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Can I now move on to, because item 6 has been withdrawn, so it's item 7. Sarah, anything to add on the addendum?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing further. I just noted there was nothing for the Tesco's and the Churchdale. I noted during the presentation. Nothing further.
Okay, thank you. So items 8, 9 and 10 are just for noting. So can we note them? Well done, thank you. Is that for everybody? Yes. Anybody against? Okay, right. So now date of next meeting, which is item 10. So this planning committee is scheduled for the 20th of August this month for a planning committee, and it's expected to be another virtual meeting. So we have to advise and tell the people who are watching at home to keep checking the website for details. Can I pay my thanks to all members and planning officers, and also thank the ICT officers such as Sadiq who are producing the meeting, and the Democratic Services and Legal Officers team who've supported us throughout this evening. Can I thank everybody in the public who've been watching and listening to the debate. Before I close, once again, what I started with was our best wishes to Sarah on her maternity leave, and we look forward to working with her in April. Is it April next year, Sarah?
Yep.
Okay, so April, and we should have another person in tow with her, right? So
good luck, Sarah.
Yeah, good luck.
In
the
Silver Cross chariot.
Yes. Okay, so with that, colleagues, I'd like to close the meeting, and we wait till everything has gone off, right? So you watch the little curve.